Hey, good afternoon. Sorry if some of you just got dropped off. We'll wait just a few minutes as participants are jumping in. Okay, hey, welcome to today's webinar. We've got folks joining in as we speak. We're going to go ahead and get started though. So quickly, want to just say I'm thrilled to have everyone here. Joined today with the Arctic Wolf team. We'll be discussing cyber risk management and the really hot topic of cyber insurance. I'm joined today by Neil and Nathan from Arctic Wolf. Chase, if you'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And just a little bit about the panelists. We don't have Nathan's picture up here, but I'll get them both to introduce themselves here in a moment. I'm Aaron Banner. I am the director of the security and the networking practice here at XenTegra. My background is spent 31 years in the Army, retired as a colonel back about a year and a half ago. Came to XenTegra and stood up a security practice. And, about 6 months ago, I took over our existing networking practice. So just thrilled to be here today. Neil, if we can go ahead and get a quick intro from you, and then Nathan, if you can go right after he's done.
Yeah, so my name is Neill Tyler. I'm a senior sales engineer here at Arctic Wolf. I actually cover Alabama and Mississippi as my territory, but been here about to start my fourth year. My background prior to coming to Arctic Wolf was more on the data center side. But as I've come here, recognizing just the many different issues that need to be addressed from a cybersecurity standpoint, and just the great ways that we at Arctic Wolf have to be able to address a lot of those. And we'll get into those a little bit more, but I'll go ahead and hand it over to Nathan and let him do a quick intro.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, my name is Nathan Little. Originally, I was one of the co-founders of an incident response firm called Tetra Defense. That firm was acquired by Arctic Wolf about 2.5 years ago. So that's how I ended up at Arctic Wolf. I used to lead our incident response practice day in and day out, responding to some of the cyber incidents that we'll talk about. And it's uniquely relevant because most of those incidents that our team worked were actually referred to us by the cyber insurance claims teams when one of their insurance policyholders had an incident. So I've lived kind of day in and day out the cyber breach world, and these days I help the team at Arctic Wolf understand the insurance landscape, understand the threat landscape, and making sure that our strategy with cyber insurance, risks and controls plays well in the overall market. So excited to share some information with all of you.
Hey, thank you, gentlemen. So who is XenTegra? So XenTegra, we're basically 5 companies. We've got XenTegra LLC. We've got our nearshore in Canada. We have our offshore in India. We have our SMB teams, XenTegra One out in California. They pretty much handle the whole SMB market. And then we have XenTegra Services, which is our MSP, and that's anything from managed services to support contracts, things like that. I want to briefly talk about the 5 practices that we have within XenTegra. So there's the 2 I already mentioned, networking and security, which those 2 I run. We have our Salesforce practice or modern applications. They do full setup of Salesforce. I'm sorry, not Salesforce, but ServiceNow. Either helping resell products from ServiceNow or coming in and helping you enhance and achieve greater usability in your ServiceNow environment. We have our modern workspace practice, basically focused on EUC. That's where our Citrix practice really resides. And then we have our data center practice, a lot of Nutanix stuff that we do in there. Okay, so a little bit about who we are. So we're a value-added reseller. We basically partner with many of our vendors to be able to reduce costs for our clients. In software, hardware, and licensing resales. I'll tell you a little bit. I know you think that, like, hey, a VAR is a VAR, right? And there are a lot of VARs out there. It's true. On a later slide, I'll cover a little bit about VAR 2.0 and what makes us a little bit different. The XenTegra model really is to build a community, which is kind of what we're doing here today, and then create solutions that serve that community. Chase, can you back up one slide, please? Okay, our consulting services. So, whether that's security, talking about MDR or SASE, whether that's networking, Fortinet, Cisco, Juniper, Arista, what have you, whether that's in Salesforce or ServiceNow, or the various other things we do in EUC and data center. We've got strategic consulting services set up, around all those practices and around all of our vendors that we provide along with our services. Our managed services, so whether that's managed services or support via contracts or other means, all that resides within our MSP, and those managed services really focus on Fortinet, Cisco, Nutanix, NetScaler, and Citrix. And then our complimentary assessments. So we offer various complimentary assessments at no cost to our clients based on what your needs are. So again, this is part of we create solutions for the community that we build. So we can do complimentary assessments on a variety of things. You can just check out our website for that. Okay, next slide, please. And then, so XenTegra was really born out of this need that our founder and CEO Andy Whiteside saw when he was at Citrix. So it was a great product, but the customers really weren't enabled to use that product to the most efficiency. So Andy decided he was going to go out on his own about 13 years ago, form this business originally around Citrix and helping enhance that experience for our clients. And then now, like I said, we've got 5 practices in 5 different companies that focus on doing those same things within those areas. Okay, next slide, please. And finally, okay, what is VAR 2.0? So these are the things that we bring to the VAR model that are different than anyone else in this space. I talked about the complimentary assessments. We're at a webinar today that we host. We bring in our vendors, and we talk about things that our customers want. So I really hope you enjoy what we do today. We do hands-on workshops, whether that's like more of an executive briefing format where we bring in executives and develop a workshop around what you want to hear, what you want to talk about, what you want to do, or actual things like bring in some of our partners to do hands-on keyboard type things. And those are usually 2 hours to 8 hours, depending on what the need is. We do podcasts. So I have a podcast called Command and Control. You can check that out. We have podcasts around Nutanix, iGel, you name it. There's podcasts out there. You can go to our website to check that out. And then finally, our discounted conference passes. So in the security space, I work on passes to RSA, to Black Hat, on the networking side, Fortinet Accelerate, F5 conference. So, and then across our entire business, we do these conference passes for our clients. So we discount those by at least 90%, and we give those out to our clients so that you can go to the conferences and we can talk to you there. All right, let's go to the final slide. Okay, so what's in it for you today? So there's a link here. Chase, can you help me find that button that we're supposed to push? I don't see it.
Yep, you should see a button below. It's called titled Schedule Your Demo. Just click on that, fill out that form, and we'll get you connected and on our schedule for a demo.
Okay, so yes, during the presentation, just click that link. We can schedule a demo for you. Once we schedule that demo, and we book a meeting, then we can get this $150 gift card out to you. Because we have such a large audience today, we did not open the microphones for everyone to chime in and ask questions. But if you will just put your questions in the chat, we will get to you by the end of the webinar. All right, with that, team, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate the intro, and we'll go ahead and get started on the Arctic Wolf side of this. And we're going to talk a little bit about security and insurance convergence, what the current landscape is, what the market overview, and then really want to spend some time on how we at Arctic Wolf can help address those. So we've already done the introduction, so we'll kind of jump into the content here. So when we're looking at this, from an overarching standpoint, the first thing that you really have to deal with is addressing the problem that you're trying to solve. And the problem that you're trying to solve is cyber risk, and cyber risk is business risk. So, what we want to do is really look at the ways that has traditionally been approached. The traditional approach to that has been to throw lots and lots of technology at your risk and try to mitigate it that way. And you have to, you can either assume risk, you can mitigate risk, or you can transfer risk. And what we've seen from an Arctic Wolf approach to this is that there's plenty of technology, but your technology is only as good as the people that you have to deploy and implement that technology. And so that's one of the areas that we come into this from an Arctic Wolf approach. The other side of that is warranty, which we'll talk a little bit about. And then the final piece of this is around the risk transference. And this is, where Arctic Wolf has taken this very, very seriously. You can look at, where bringing Nathan and his team on and making them part of Arctic Wolf just kind of shows the level of importance that Arctic Wolf places on insurance in this total risk view. And so Nathan, get ready to hand it over to you. But while we're doing that, how many people are on your team from an Arctic Wolf standpoint that are wrapped just around insurance?
Yeah, at Arctic Wolf, there's about 7 people that are fully dedicated to the insurance ecosystem, making sure that our clients, our Arctic Wolf clients, get the best possible insurance benefits, making sure that also we are an incident response firm that's approved by cyber insurance providers, because that's a big aspect of things. A lot of people haven't experienced it or don't fully understand the insurance ecosystem, but certain cybersecurity providers, incident response firms like the incident response team inside of Arctic Wolf, are either approved or not approved by cyber insurance. And it's really important to partner with security companies that are approved by insurance carriers, and Arctic Wolf is as well. So this team is dedicated to all of the nuance to that industry and just making sure that our clients are in the best possible position, because cyber attacks are more prevalent than ever. I think it's really interesting whenever somebody says, "Oh, like Nathan, what do you do for work? What do you do in the cyber industry?" I always say, those major incidents you hear, like the oil pipeline a few years ago, the United Health incident, the major cyber attacks. Well, we respond to those, and Arctic Wolf as a whole, with the managed detection and response services, prevents those incidents. But me specifically, and the topic of this presentation, the insurance world, we respond, we investigate, we remediate, we recover from those major incidents. And sometimes people say, "Oh, I didn't realize that those were so prevalent," because for every cyber attack you hear about in the news, like the United Healthcare incident, which was a Black Cat ransomware attack. Black Cat is a very prevalent ransomware group. There is thousands more incidents that you don't hear about. The United Healthcare Group, the reason that that incident became so noteworthy is because downstream of that, so many healthcare organizations were affected for months and months, and they couldn't book any revenue, they couldn't invoice anybody. That's why it costed them over $2 billion, and 22 million of that, I believe that number is correct, was actually paid to the attacker as an extortion payment for their ransom. So some of the incidents are so catastrophic because of the downstream effect and so high in terms of monetary damages and losses, like the 2 billion, where they become newsworthy. But there is thousands of incidents that are just like this that attack smaller companies or similar companies that aren't as newsworthy, just because they don't drive as many clicks. So if we go to the next slide, we can kind of see how prevalent these incidents are. So this data is very current, and it comes from our incident response team's case volume. So as you can see, on the left side of this bar chart is uh, the industries that are impacted. So from top down, it's most impacted to least impacted for the most part. And as you can see, pretty much every industry is somewhat equal of a target. A lot of people think that the industry you are in makes you more or less of a target. So, for example, one way to interpret this bar chart would be, hey, manufacturing is the most commonly targeted industry. Well, it would be an accurate interpretation of just what this chart represents. But what it probably is, a more accurate interpretation is manufacturing spends the least on cybersecurity, and is the greatest risk. These attackers, including the Black Cat group that was responsible for that United Healthcare incident, Unite that healthcare company was not a target. Like, they weren't picked ahead of time and said, okay, we're going to do whatever it takes to get into the organization. A lot of this is just my theories around incident response in general. I have no inside information to that incident. But these attackers, ransomware attackers, data breach attackers, financial fraud attackers, they're all very opportunistic. There is almost, other than a small segment of cyber attacks that's either um, a focus of adverse militaries or politically driven, most cyber attacks are opportunistic. And what I mean by that is they look for organizations that are insecure, and it's not humans looking for them typically. It's all of the attack bots and different vulnerability scans and things that are just happening continuously until they throw their virtual bot hand up and say, hey, there's a company that's not very secure here. We recommend conducting a ransomware incident. And that's what happens with some of these top businesses: manufacturing, finance and insurance, educational and nonprofit, the ones that are at the top there. That is because they typically don't spend enough on security. Beyond that, once you start getting into healthcare, you do get a little bit of a situation where, okay, if an attacker has three options for easy attacks, and one's a healthcare company, and one is a small retail firm, and another is a small shipping company, they're probably going to spend their time attacking the healthcare company because there's more sensitive data. There's um, a potentially higher payout if they can impact patient care and give the hospital system or healthcare system no choice but to pay a ransom. So once you get on the list, the unfortunate list of good opportunities for attacks, then there is a little bit of a decision to be made by the attacker of what attack they think is most profitable for them. So the key
So,
takeaway here is attackers like the path of least resistant for attacks. They like to attack with the same method, the same vulnerability, the same exploit every time if they can, because then it's just a simple playbook that they can execute. The last quick comment I'll make for those that are a little bit more cybersecurity kind of aware or read a lot more of the news than others, this might be familiar. So there was, of course, the Exchange Hafnium vulnerability that happened about, gosh, I think it was almost 4 years ago now. That was Microsoft Exchange servers hosted on-prem had a glaring vulnerability that would let the attackers walk right in the door. It was discovered by the attackers, exploited, and a patch became available. But people didn't patch for years. We still run into it as the root cause of incidents once in a while. So fast forward like 18 months from that Microsoft Exchange incident, another really bad vulnerability that was easy to exploit came out, and it was a vulnerability in an open source software called Log4j, which was in a ton of products globally. And everybody said, gosh, Log4j is going to lead to so many ransomware incidents, so many cyber attacks. But when you looked at like leaked internal communications from the attackers, they would joke amongst themselves and they would say, everybody's so worried about Log4j, we're not even done exploiting all the vulnerable Exchange servers. Like it's way easier to exploit Exchange servers than deal with Log4j for various technical reasons. So that is, not only do we know it based on what we see in the industry, the attackers talking amongst themselves have identified, of course, that they like the path of least resistance to conduct these attacks. And that's why every single organization in the world is a potential victim for a major cyber incident from even the same attack group that was responsible for that huge $2 billion healthcare loss that we saw. There we go. So for more threat intel like this, especially if you want it in a little bit more readable format, easier to understand format than maybe I describe it on the fly, I highly recommend some of these Arctic Wolf resources, especially the State of Cybersecurity report and all of the Arctic Wolf Labs reports. Those are very kind of moment by moment industry security news relevant that are really interesting to read. Okay, so with that, we'll dive right into the insurance world. I think before we dive a little deeper, it's important to understand, like a lot of insurance, cyber insurance is very similar. There's typically three core parties involved in any insurance purchase and any kind of day-to-day of the policy itself. So the best way to purchase cyber insurance is through a insurance broker that's really knowledgeable about cyber insurance. These days, most insurance brokers will have a small team inside of them that specializes in maybe a few different types of insurance, but cyber insurance being one of them. And from us, these brokers want companies like Arctic Wolf, and we do this day in and day out, to better help them support their client in identifying insurance risks, becoming the best possible risk for the insurance carriers, which means they get the best possible policies and overall benefits available. Because when the brokers are working on getting a cyber insurance policy for their clients, they're working across typically 3 to 4 insurance carriers that they have relationships with, and they're working with the underwriters at that carrier team. Those underwriters are the ones evaluating, just like homeowners insurance, car insurance, everything else. Although cyber insurance is a little bit more of an art form these days than some of those uh, insurances that have been around a longer time that are a little bit more dialed in. These underwriters are evaluating every risk, every security control, and deciding what policy your organization can have, how much you're going to pay in a monthly premium or yearly premium for it, and what your limits are going to be, and any sub limits, certain carve outs for things like ransom payments. Your broker will help you try to avoid those. But the underwriters are the ones that really care about controls. And those underwriters, we have partnerships with them. They work on us with data about and get data from us about what's causing incidents, what they can underwrite to and be better to avoid incidents, helping their clients get the proper security controls. And then the third group is the one that you really hope to never have to deal with, and that's the claims group inside of the carrier. So if you actually had an incident, just like in the automotive insurance world, and you contacted your insurance carrier, you would be sent to the claims team. In the cyber world, these claims teams are typically have a legal or cybersecurity background and help tag in the right teams if you do have an incident response firm like us typically an attorney, and then sometimes other teams are involved, like a public relations firm, crisis communication. Uh, and these teams, we work with them to make the smoothest possible overall claims process. Almost 80 to 90% of the incidents we respond to are actually referred to us. They're not currently Arctic Wolf customers. They're referred to us by the insurance carrier claims team. So those are the three parties to really make sure that you understand and are aware of. Okay. And I see there's a few questions. I'll address some of those questions in a second, or maybe towards the end, but keep them coming because I am seeing them come through. So one of the key questions that our clients ask us, and any organization we talks to asks us, is how do underwriters evaluate applicants? And they really look at three things. First, and this is arguably the most important to all of you because it's the one that's very much in your control and it impacts the next two sections, but that's the organization profile. So some of those are ones that you can't change. Obviously, you're not gonna reduce your revenue to reduce cyber risk and ultimate financial impact. That would be crazy. No business ever would do that. You're not going to change your industry, and you're typically not going to change your data sensitivity, although there are some tweaks you can make to how you store data, what you keep, and for how long. But what you can control is your cybersecurity maturity. And that is the main thing that the underwriters are going to look at. Underwriters, of course, they will insure less secure organizations, but those organizations are going to pay a drastic premium for the coverage. What you're best off doing is, and we'll cover some of the security controls, but making sure that you have the best possible security controls in place so that you are in an elite bucket of insureds for that insurance carrier. And I have a woodpecker outside my window, so hopefully you can't hear that. Um, to make sure you're in that elite risk group. That group is where we work very hard to make sure Arctic Wolf clients are in. And that group is getting the lowest premiums with the highest coverage and the best overall possible insurance benefits. And that is mostly dictated by your cybersecurity controls. Now, there are still other things that insurance looks at. They look at the likelihood of a cyber incident. Now, that is mostly dictated by your cyber insurance maturity, but they do add in your revenue, your industry, and your employees. But if you remember, that what I talked about earlier, gone are the days where the insurance carriers would really focus on what industry you're in. Like it used to be assumed that like, oh, healthcare and financial, they carry the most cyber risk. That's just not true anymore. Every company has significant cyber risk and is a target or potential victim of attacks. So then they also look at overall potential financial impacts. And that is where industry and data types do play a little bit more of a significant role. For example, if you're an organization that stores 30 million social security numbers, personal identity information, you are always going to pay more for insurance than a very similar company that didn't store any data. And that's just because that data, holding that data, carries risk. But again, that's not necessarily in your control. That just makes your security controls and the protection of that data even more important to make sure you're insurable, first off, as an organization, but then make sure you have the best possible cyber insurance benefits on top of that. We can go to the next slide. So the reason all of this is so important and working with a great broker is so important. In insurance procurement is kind of like the grand bazaar these days. There is so many options. There's so many different routes to go about it. Everybody, including us right now in this webinar, talks about insurance different ways. And working with teams that are very knowledgeable about insurance, starting with your insurance broker is incredibly important. Everybody has slightly different premiums, and sometimes the premiums are too good to be true because there's different sublimits on major types of incidents or expenses you can occur. For example, no good broker would ever recommend a policy that had, for example, $2 million of cyber insurance coverage, but then had a sublimit of $200,000 for any potential ransom payment if your organization was totally locked up and the attacker encrypted your backups as well. So that's why it's so important to have a good insurance broker and a good cybersecurity team like Arctic Wolf behind you that really has you in a spot where you can get the best possible insurance coverage, because there are so many options and it can get a little bit confusing. Okay, so then what's happening in the cyber insurance market? I think continually over the past 10 years or so, as we've seen cyber insurance become pretty much a necessary type of insurance, like a lot of other property and casualty insurance policies, we see rising claim volume. No surprise, a rising claim volume with 1 in 4 insureds experiencing some sort of breach doesn't necessarily lead to a paid claim, but experiencing some sort of incident that could trigger a claim. That is what, on the right side of the screen, has increased the premiums. How does the insurance ecosystem work? If there's more events, more claims, they have to charge everybody a little bit more to cover those claims and get back to profitability as a policy. That's the whole philosophy around insurance. Insurance is not designed to avoid claims entirely. They expect and we've been told, they want to pay claims because that means the insurance is necessary. If they got 0 claims, it would be a bad line of insurance that wouldn't sell. But they have to increase the premiums to make sure that they are running a profitable book of insurance. So, in conjunction with the increased premiums, we get to the middle section of this screen, increased requirements for eligibility. Cyber insurance, a few years ago, I've been told was losing money or nearly losing money as an insurance policy. Obviously, that can happen from year to year in any insurance line, but not something that's sustainable. So I think the general response to that was increasing the underwriting and making organizations be more secure to qualify for insurance. Rather than years ago, it was a very soft insurance market. Pretty much anybody could get an insurance policy with almost no security controls. They would just ask you how much revenue you had and what type of data you store. Now there's 40, 50, or even more questions at times to help underwrite and make sure that they're rejecting organizations that aren't as secure. So that's how the insurance market has responded to essentially the drastic uptick in the amount of cyber attacks that have happened. And now cyber insurance is working incredibly well, is, in my opinion, absolutely necessary. We don't sell insurance, of course. We're a cybersecurity firm, but in my opinion, cyber insurance is an absolutely necessary type of insurance for most businesses to have, unless you're large enough to self-assure and assume all the risk. But there is some good news in the cyber insurance market. Despite premiums rising, underwriting is getting more challenging. That's opened up a good opportunity for companies because premiums have risen, because underwriting is getting more challenging. There are some effective discounts to be had. Implementing proper security solutions, we've been told by many of our clients and many of our broker partners and many of our insurance partners that implementing security solutions provided by Arctic Wolf and similar solutions can discount your premiums by up to 25%. So because there's so much scrutiny on security controls and so much more analysis done of the security controls of insureds, that's really opened up the market for good discounts, better coverage for organizations that have proper security controls like Arctic Wolf MDR, which is managed detection and response. So then with control-based underwriting criteria, it does become a little bit dense, a little bit complicated. You start to really have to evaluate the overall benefit of security controls. I don't have time to go through all of these, and I won't go through all of these. And I know Neil, you'll probably want to weigh in on
Yeah.
on a few of them. But this is in general, we've combined the different controls that insurance carriers care about, and these are the different tiers. The minimum requirements bucket, if you have multi-factor authentication and you have backups and you have a rough incident response plan and you have an endpoint protection solutions and a couple of other things, you will be able to get insurance for the most part. Now, you don't necessarily want to be in that bucket because you're going to be paying a premium. You're going to be a generally high risk insured. And you're probably better off spending a little bit more money on security controls and getting a better policy and likely paying less for it. So you can add in slightly better protection and you can get more advanced endpoint protection and add things like endpoint detection and response. You can add a better vulnerability management program, and rather than just scanning for vulnerabilities, have something with built-in patch management, and you can install better remote access controls, remote access systems. But where you really want to end up is the recommended protections, the top tiered risk. And admittedly, I'm a little bit biased because I am at Arctic Wolf, but the data and the overall result speaks for itself. The holy grail of kind of overall protection is full-blown managed detection and response, MDR. So that's having the right security tools, the right monitoring of it, the right team behind it. So any event that occurs in any telemetry, anything that looks a little bit off, before it gets bad, before it gets to a major cyber incident, a insurance claim causing cyber incident, it will be detected, mitigated, the right people will be notified. And although still scary, still not something you want to experience, it's stopped before there's any sort of business interruption, any sort of financial damage. But then there's some other things you can add as well. Um, Neil, anything you want to weigh in on?
Um, so I'm going to hit on that a little bit later and tie in, but we'll answer kind of, really to me the ultimate part of this is how does Arctic Wolf help with these controls, and we're going to cover that here in just a second, and hopefully answer that a little bit more in depth. But Nathan, to your point, we want to make sure that we're not just meeting minimums. We're working with our customers to be able to move into these stronger protection, the best recommended protection area, not just the minimum.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna take a second to catch up on a couple of Q&A questions before we move on. One of them was from the original kind of industries that experience attack. The question was, for example, in education, are they looking for student data or the school's information? A little bit of both. Most attacks that we respond to in the education sector are purely ransomware attacks. And yes, they are stealing data as well, but their goal is to collect a ransom payment. Um, and stealing data is a method where they threaten to release the data publicly if a ransom is not paid. And every once in a while, an organization will make the decision to pay that ransom and reduce the risk to the data that's stolen. So, yes, there are many, many cyber attacks that target student information, identity information that can be resold and reused later on. But most of the time, educational institutes that are attacked simply because they were high risk and very vulnerable and an opportunity for attack, not because they're necessarily after student information specifically. Another quick question, the last one I'll answer for now before I dive into the rest, maybe later on. Um, how do you assess the adequacy of a company's cyber insurance coverage? Well, your insurance broker is for sure the best person to do that. They know insurance really well. They know the legal language of insurance policies. They're the only ones that can do a great job of it. But the things to look out for, most organizations, if you want something that, for example, protects you against ransomware, you're going to want a policy that's at least $1 to $2 million in overall limit. and potentially more if your revenue is over 100 million plus. And that's because most cyber incidents cost between $1 and $2 million to remediate and respond to. Now, there is a wide range. There's everything from a couple 100,000 on the low end to tens of millions of dollars on the high end. But limit is kind of where you start with cyber insurance. And then your broker can identify specific coverage issues or benefits inside of there. I'll catch up on some of the other QA questions at the end if we have time. And Neil, I'll try to fly through the rest of this so we can make sure we get to your section as well.
Yep.
Okay, so cyber insurance, what it's not. Cyber insurance is not a replacement for proper cybersecurity risk controls and mitigation. No company should ever think, okay, I have cyber insurance, so I'm not going to have multi-factor authentication and other critical security controls like endpoint protection and managed detection and response. And and the reason being is because although insurance will pay for a lot of the financial damages of an incident, there is no insurance that can make a company have no impact if they're hit by a major ransomware incident. Like there is no insurance coverage that can adequately benefit you for reputational harm, for employee morale harm, things like that. So insurance is necessary, but it's not an end all be all to handle all of cyber risk. So then what it is, it's cyber risk or cyber insurance is a method to complete that overall risk protection cycle that Neil touched on at the start, where everybody knows that no matter how perfect cybersecurity controls and response are, there will always be cyber incidents. Some of them are just impossible to avoid for various different reasons. And the problem is you don't know exactly what type of incident that will be until after it happens. If you knew, you'd be able to avoid it. So cyber insurance is the last piece of the risk puzzle. And for all of that risk that you can't avoid no matter what you do, then you transfer it and you transfer it to the cyber insurance company for whatever limit is deemed necessary by you and your broker to cover both first party liability, actual expenses you incur, and then any third party liability, lawsuits, things like that.
All right, so we're going to let Nathan take a breath here and maybe answer some questions here towards the end of this. But really, when it comes down to what we're doing here is the big question is how can Arctic Wolf help? Both from a risk standpoint, from making you more insurable. How do we approach this? And so the way that we started, the organization was really looking at what is the biggest impact that we can have on this? And that started with not just looking at a single instance of how can we do this on a company by company basis. We wanted to be able to look at it from an organizational standpoint where we can provide security operations at scale. And we do this in several different areas, but we start with the foundation of our Arctic Wolf platform. And with the platform, that allows us to look at many different areas of coverage of ingestion. So we're, the traditional approach to cybersecurity going back years was, if you had a great firewall and you had a great, antivirus, that was enough. Now with, and I think one of the questions kind of addressed this where you're looking at, remote work, and all the different tools are in place. We have to be able to look at this holistically. So, on the outside of this, we have our Cyber Jumpstart portal, which is, where you can start looking at, our cyber resilience assessment and frameworks and some guidelines to help you address all of your gaps in your cybersecurity. And that also leads into the very right side of this, which falls into where Nathan, has come from the Tetra side that we incorporated as the incident response. So in between there is the areas that we really want to address, which is how do we reduce the risk? And that goes back to that our very first slide, talking about tools and talking about people that we deploy here. So the very first tool that we have is our platform. The platform that we have, we're not looking at just individual organizations. We're pulling data in from many customers into one single platform. This allows us to do some things at scale, and to give you an idea of this, when you're looking at the amount of data that we're pulling in, over the course of a week, it's something like 5.5 trillion observations per week. And you can see, just down in the bottom right-hand corner, the scale of the observations that we're pulling in. That gives us some visibility into what's happening, both from a threat landscape, and just what's changing and evolving over time. So first and foremost, we bring the platform, being able to analyze this data, and being able to monitor and protect our customers. The other side of this is the people portion of this. So, not only are we looking at just a massive amount of data and able to process that at scale, but we have 600 plus security engineers that are spread out over our 5 security operation centers. So we're looking, as Nathan mentioned earlier, for those people that are trying to get in, and being able to address that as quickly as possible. So the scale of what we're able to do here is really one of the functions that we're trying to do. And I'll kind of go back to, we hit on this being a really critical slide earlier. If you're looking at the problems that we solve here, and I've highlighted in orange the ones that we directly address, and then the ones that are in light blue are ones that we augment. When you're looking at how we solve these requirements that are in place and for the stronger protection, that's where our incident response comes in, where our security awareness training comes in, being able to identify the vulnerabilities, those 0 days. And, as Nathan said, those are not even the ones that are the most critical, because, most of these threat actors still haven't finished working through, the previous list that they were working off of for Exchange and other ones. But, we address vulnerability management and some things we'll talk about here in a second, that are even above and beyond the managed detection and response piece. So when we're looking at the full solution, kind of break down what each one of these entails, is managed detection and response for us is taking all of the sources of telemetry that we can pull in. So that is cloud, that is firewall, that is endpoint, network monitoring that we're doing. We want to be able to pull all of that together and correlate that and address that. And the platform allows us to do that at a speed and scale, that I don't know that there's any other place in the industry that can really keep up with what we can do there. But the other thing that the platform allows us to do is to establish, not just looking at individual triggers for those threats, but we can also establish baselines and baseline behavior that allows us to see, things that you're not going to see just looking at a single instance of a firewall log or an EDR log. We're able to establish what normal behavior is. And once you've established normal tendencies within a network, then you can start addressing and looking at, abnormal tendencies. So the other two here really goes back to several things that Nathan hit on earlier from a risk standpoint. Is managed risk for us is looking at an environment and looking, what are the vulnerabilities that already exist, and finding ways to go in and harden those. When Nathan was talking about, who are the primary targets? Well, the primary targets are the ones that are the easiest for those threat actors to be able to find, a foothold or find a way into their network, and then be able to evaluate, what the value is. If they've got 2 or 3 targets, then sit down and evaluate what are the most valuable targets. The idea here from a managed risk standpoint is, for our customers and the organizations we're protecting, we want to make them be, as difficult to get into as possible, and to reduce that risk. And we do that through use of the platform, and also through our concierge security team being able to know our customers and know what the risk is in place. So, Nathan mentioned, do you have, valuable critical data on site? Okay, where does that live? We're looking at that from a risk standpoint and saying, hey, let's go address these issues first, and then we'll worry about where the less critical data is a little bit farther down the line, and therefore maximize the risk reduction. And the last one is just making sure that your users are human firewalls and human sensors. You can look at many, and Nathan, you can probably speak to this as much as anybody, but you can look at many of the breaches that have been in place. They've been at organizations that have very, very high security in place. And yet, they have users that have been manipulated to be able to get past those security measures. So, one of the areas that we do, very extensive work, particularly with those, recommended solutions, is really looking at day-to-day assessments of being able to address those security measures and help you reduce those over time. So, I know we're coming up on time, and I want to say the best way to find out more about all of these things and how we can dive into these is really to schedule a meeting with us and XenTegra with the team and be able to sit down and talk about this as it applies to you. But when we're looking at this from a risk reduction standpoint, so there's a kind of phrase in cybersecurity is assume the breach. You can look on the left-hand side here and look at the annual likelihood, from ransomware, data breach, business email compromise. Those numbers, keep growing higher. And when you start looking at reducing the likelihood that your organization can, be on one of these lists, the ways to do that is, number one, is to have more secure and aware employees, and that is what we do and deliver through our managed security awareness. So it's a very easy, low touch delivery. Again, the managed piece of that. So we're delivering that to your users, and then also going through and reducing that risk around those existing vulnerabilities, like Nathan mentioned with the Exchange, the existing vulnerabilities. I've got a good friend that was, they had one external facing web server that was what ended up getting hit. And the reality of that is they had patches that had been available for about 6 months that had just not been deployed. And those are the type of things that we review and assess with our managed risk. The other side of this is from a cost standpoint to you as an organization is we want to reduce the impact. So the more of these things that we can do, the harder it is for you to experience an incident, for someone to, breach your organization. That, correlates to reducing the impact. The quicker that we can identify that with managed detection response, if it's something that goes beyond that, the quicker that we can recover, with incident response, those things are always going to benefit you as an organization. So we'd love an opportunity to talk with you more down the road on that. And, the other side of this, when we were talking about the risk transference, for customers that come on board with Arctic Wolf, if you're doing our managed detection response and bundling one of the other services with that really allows us to deliver a security operations warranty as well. So, we're helping you reduce your risk to begin with by just good hygiene around making sure you get the most out of your tools and ensuring that you have, the proper human help and assistance to get the most out of those tools. But then we also provide a lot of risk transference with what we're doing with our security operations warranty, and then helping you be more insurable and reducing those premiums as well. So, we've talked a good bit about this already, and I think Nathan did a great job of covering, what the landscape is. But, the results of this on the other side are, making sure that you have the ability to go and ask for and improve through the reporting, and the validation through frameworks that we can offer to show that you are more insurable, that you can ask for those lower premiums or ask for higher coverage. And then when you get into our warranty is being able to look at, ways to potentially fund, any deductibles if you have to have a claim, and offset a lot of those areas as well. So, I think we're pretty much down to, is there really any other questions that we that have come in as well that Nathan, you had a chance to look at?
Hey, Neil, if I can, yeah, let me just chime in on one. I think Nathan has done a good job of answering most of them. I think I've answered one or two in there, but Derek asked a great question, and I think it's at the top of all of our minds. So he says, "What's the biggest ransomware threats XenTegra anticipates for the next year, and how can businesses best prepare?" Yeah, that's a large question, and I think really let me answer the first part last. How you can best prepare, and then also correlated to what is the biggest threat kind of depends on what your environment looks like. Your threat, the threat to you may look different than other areas in a different vertical or in a different company, just based on how you prepared for specific threats. So I would say that, and Nathan goes to say, hey, the biggest risk, and I agree, is backups. You've got ransomware, but you also have double extortion, right? Which is, hey, we can go in, we can encrypt your data and hold it at ransom, but we can also expose your data. And so that could be the biggest risk, because even if you decide you're not going to pay because you have backups, well, now they have your data and they can expose your data. And data can be very sensitive, whether it's HIPAA or whether it's specific client data that maybe law firms might have, things like that. So huge risk there. So I think the biggest threat is still going to be phishing in 2025. And why do I say that? Because AI is making this faster, easier, and cheaper for adversaries to generate phishing attempts. And so when I say it kind of depends on your environment. Hey, what do you have in place for email security? When was your last penetration test? Are you SOC 2 compliant? Have you done a type 1 or type 2? And because that'll help you answer a lot of questions about your current practices, your current policies, and your current environment. So a lot of this comes down to your environment, but Derek or anyone who's got a similar question, I'd love to take more time and discuss with you deeper, so that I can first understand what your environment looks like, and your how your company approaches cybersecurity, and then I can help better answer that question for you. We're about out of time, gentlemen. Is there one more question that you want to expound on? Like I said, I think Nathan has answered most of them.
I would say, the one about, specific compliance, from what I've seen, almost all compliance is going to be very closely modeled around NIST. So that is an area that we can very much help with. Each of those controls that were in place for insurance are also going to be controls that are going to be in place, from a framework standpoint. We have capabilities around, number one, just with the services that we're providing and tying in with the existing tools that we provide visibility to. We're going to be able to address a lot of those. The other portion of that is our Jumpstart, which we can talk more about if you can, as we're talking about here, schedule a meeting with XenTegra and with us, that we can dive into that a little bit more than what we can cover in an hour here. But we have not only ways to address those, but this is where the people portion of this, we have the ability to be able to report and prove that, help you prove that not only to your insurance provider, but also anything else that you're doing from a compliance standpoint as well. So it's one thing to be able to check boxes and look like you're secure. It's another thing to be more secure. The whole purpose for what we're doing around this is be able to do both, is make you be more secure and also be able to attest to that as well.
Yeah, framework alignment I think is critical. If it's, because that answer is a little different if you're looking at NIST, if you're looking at ISO, if you're looking at CS18. the various frameworks that are out there. And, some of the other questions, kind of look particularly about remote environments, hybrid environments. Are you looking for a move to SASE? Have you considered SASE? Like, what does your network environment look like? And how is your security, from a SASE framework, what does your network look like? And then, what is your security compliance that you're aligning to that? So, I think we're out of time. Just once again, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks Arctic Wolf team for jumping on here.
And Aaron, there was one more question that it would be great to hit on. There was a question: how do we arrange the introductory meeting? What's the best way to reach out for people?
Yeah, well, first is if you can click on that link at the bottom right hand corner, that's best for us. Because we can just get after it right after we get out here. Second is, come on over to the XenTegra website and just request a meeting there. We'll line up the meetings for whatever it is you're looking for, whether it's talking to Arctic Wolf about MDR or insurance compliance, whether it's talking to us about penetration testing, cybersecurity assessments, compliance and audit requirements. There's just a lot of things we can help you out with. So those are your two options to do that. And then if all else fails, you can email me. I'll put my email in the chat. I will also tell you now, it's Aaron, AARON .banner, BANNER @XenTegra.com. And thanks everyone for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And I'll put that in the chat now.